Welcome back to the Mold Show. This is Sean McGrath. I'm a state of Florida licensed mold inspector. I have with me my co-host, Adam Horn, who is a state of Florida licensed mold remediator. Adam, how you doing today?
Good, man. How are you?
Doing well. I know we're both still busy trying to knock out a lot of these interviews too, more content for everybody. But today we've got a special guest with us. We've got Mitze Richeson with us today. Mitze is the wife of Mitze Richeson, who we had on previously, chiropractor here in Tampa, Florida. One of our goals with this show is to not only educate, but create a sense of community, if you will. And the only way we can do that is by having people share their stories. And Mitze is willing to do that with us today, and we're so thankful. Mitze, thanks for being with us. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Hello, Mitze.
I'm blessed to have this opportunity because I just want to share with others what I've gone through. So I appreciate you guys for giving me this opportunity.
Well, we're thankful you're willing to be transparent about your story and share that with others. And hopefully by doing so, we can give people some hope. Because I know there's desperate times when people are going through their mold illness and remediation with their house. Probably a lot of very hopeless feelings, and people need to hear other people's stories. So if you wouldn't mind, can you kind of walk us through how your journey started, if you will?
Yes. So my journey started in June of 2018. I moved into a house, a new home. There wasn't mold in that home, at least from what I know. And the first thing you want to do when you move into a new home is you want to do laundry, because we had to move a lot of stuff. And then the first load of laundry I did was about 3 days after we moved in, and the cold water was not flowing. It was like trickling. So I called a plumbing company, and they came out. And they found that there was a clog in the laundry line, and it was like a game piece or whatever from the old people that lived there before. And so they removed that. But then when they glued the pipe back together that had the clog in it, I was downstairs. I was doing I was doing dishes and cooking. It was around 5 o'clock in the evening, and water just started pouring down through my can lights from into our kitchen floor. So, and then he rushes downstairs, and the damage was already done at that point. And so at the time, I had no idea about what was entailed for me coming up. Because like most people have no idea about what mold does to their health. I trusted them, and their resolution was to put fans upstairs to dry the carpet, and to mop up all the stuff below, and to paint over all the stains on the ceiling with Kills. And that's what a lot of people do, because they just think that Kills will kill everything, and that, drying out everything will fix everything. And I'm one to say that it does not fix it. I fell prey to what they told me, and I believed it. And about 6 weeks to 8 weeks, somewhere around there later, I started having symptoms. So,
Well, speaking to the painting over the stains on the ceiling and all that, you're not the only one. You're not the only or first person to fall victim to that. It's actually something we talked about in pretty deep detail on our previous episode, Adam, when we're talking about our mold myths.
Yep.
It's one of the ones we dove right into. So I guess it's easy in retrospect to to look back and think should have known better, but you don't until you go through it.
Yeah, you don't. And inherently we want to trust those, out there to do the right thing. And in some cases, maybe that's what they thought was the right thing. There's an entire industry of companies out there who dry structures or dry buildings after water damage. And it's not if you're ever going to have exposures to water damage, it's when. But there's a process to drying them properly, if you can dry the areas that get wet properly. But it usually involves more of an evasive approach to ensure that you get it dry quickly or remove what materials you can to avoid the process of mold growth. And in a lot of cases, people don't want to go to those extremes or don't know any better. And then it results in something similar to what you're describing, or, it can.
Mitzi, when did you realize that event could be playing a role with your health and how you were feeling?
So this happened June 6th of 2018, the water event. It was about 6 to 8 weeks later, I started having hives from head to toe. And then, and I thought it was I tried everything. I thought it was my emotions because my daughter was leaving for college. My oldest, was leaving for college. So I thought maybe this is my emotions. Maybe I'm just upset. And then I tried, and that didn't fix anything. Maybe it's something in my house. Maybe it's something I'm allergic to. I ridded everything with, going to all the stuff, non-chemicals, non-fragrances, non-everything. That didn't fix it either. So then I thought, okay, so there's got to be something in my house, because I would go to work at my office and I could breathe. I would come home, and about 1 hour after being home, I would start wheezing. So I hired a company to come into my home and do air quality testing because I didn't know. So they did air quality testing, and they told me they tested every room in our house. And they told me that your living room, which is right outside of my kitchen where the water damage was, but it's also right outside of where I have a huge sliding glass door where it goes to the outside. He goes, well, maybe it's just because you're outside, your outside air, if you're opening the sliding glass door, it's coming in. The mold is coming in from the outside. Because what we find is everything's okay except this area, which was right outside of my kitchen. I mean, like 10 feet from my kitchen.
Yeah, literally feet.
Yeah, where he set up his tripod. And it was very high. It was higher than the outside mold. And he actually told me, you're okay. It's only slightly higher than the outside mold. And I'm just like, now that I know what I know, I'm just like, really? Like, mold should never be higher inside than it is outside. And so I was like, okay, well, then it's not the mold, because he told me everything's okay because it's just, it's just the outside mold. And then that was November, and I started getting sicker and sicker and sicker, and couldn't breathe and couldn't sleep and all the stuff. And then my husband, this is when we first got to know you, Sean, and he goes, that there's a guy that at church with us that does mold testing. And I was like, no. So that's when I reached out to you, and you came into our house and you figured out this is what's happening and this is what the answers are. Like, it's not about the air testing or the outside mold. It's about what's inside your house. And I get that now, but it took me a while to figure that out. And I feel bad for people who fall prey to that.
Well, I remember talking with you.
It's not anything that gives you the real truth of what's happening inside your house. So,
well, unfortunately, a lot of them, it's not negligence. It's just them not willing to adapt with the new data we have available to us, the new sampling methodologies we have available to us, how much work it takes to actually physically do a deep dive inspection of the house. I mean, it takes a long time to go through a home and truly understand what's going on there. But I remember talking with you right around the time all this is happening. It may be the first couple of times you all started talking to me about your situation. And I asked you if there'd been any water events in the home. And it was almost like a light bulb went off in your head, just looking at you, looking into your eyes. I could almost actually see the light bulb lighting up above your head. Yep. Can you talk a little bit about what you were thinking there? And
yeah, 100%, because I remember that day very specifically, and I almost feel stupid that I didn't see it before. But that's what we're doing here today, right? Is like there's so many people like me that don't even put the two and two together, because I didn't either. And I trusted the plumbing company that said they fixed it, and they put a fan up there and they painted over it with Kills. So I never even thought more about it, and I just thought, oh, it's all good, everything's good. And then when you came into my house that day and you asked me that first question, you asked me, has there ever been water damage in your home? And that's when the light bulb went off. And just like you said, like that was a light bulb moment for me. And I was like, yeah, there was. And I just didn't even think about.
Mitze, the previous mold testing guy didn't ask any questions like that?
No, he never asked it. All he did is put his tripod up, and he told me that the air in my living room was only slightly higher from the air outside, right. Which, yeah.
If I remember correctly, we did I remember correctly going into the ceiling cavity to test, but if I remember correctly, there's a lot of aspergillus / penicillium up there. And then we even found some of the surrounding areas of the kitchen that had been impacted from the water, coming down from the can lights.
Yes, there was aspergillus, there was cotomium, there was even Stachybotrys. So the highest was aspergillus, the second highest was cotomium.
So
go ahead, Adam.
I know. Mitze, in your position, if I wasn't in this industry, I would have felt the exact same way. I would have assumed that everything was taken care of. It probably wouldn't have dawned on me either. And I think most people wouldn't necessarily connect the two things together because you didn't know. It's not like mold was on the forefront of your brain. Right. You weren't feeling well and you were searching for answers like most people do, dietary, whatever it is. Like you start to scan your body and try to figure out. And when it's not something you can visibly see, or if it's not slapping you in the face, then that isn't a dot you're necessarily going to connect unless you've been through it before. And you laugh at yourself now, knowing what you know now, because it's not something you can unlearn. And you start to realize it can really cause havoc having lived through it. And I'm sure now you will tell anybody who's willing to listen about your situation. And that's important because it isn't something that's talked about, but we all live in these buildings. You, fortunately, were there for your water damage event. A lot of people buy a home brand new or used and aren't there for their water damage events or multiple water damage events. And it's just been painted over or whatever, not knowing all of the potential hazards that may be hidden from plain sight. So I appreciate you talking about it because I know it's got to frustrate you beyond words.
Oh, yeah, it's been a nightmare. It's been a nightmare. Just getting of that nightmare. Yeah,
there's got to be a lot of underlying trauma there too, Mitze, that I'm sure you're still dealing with just because of what you went through with your health. So we're really thankful you're willing to sit here and share some of this.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Now, finding it was one thing. Remediating was a whole nother ordeal. Can you kind of walk us through how that experience went? What are some of the things you learned? Some of the things you do differently? Maybe if you could speak to some of that. Do you have something to add there, Adam?
No. When she said, yeah, I'm anxious to hear about how the remediation process went, since that's what I do. So go ahead, Mitzi.
Adam, I wish I would have known you. I wish I would have listened to Sean if he gave me that advice back then. I don't know. But when you're so sick and you don't know what to do,
Yeah.
you're just desperate and you
Right.
just but if I could give anybody any advice, listen to Adam, because so what I went through, that was your question.
Yeah.
I truly believe that my remediation process caused me to be very sick. Like it made me worse. I don't know if you see that, Adam, often, but I trusted a company and I Googled, I mean, I'm a big researcher, so I Googled it. They had good reviews. They had, all that. And I trusted them to come inside my home and assess the situation and to remediate, to get rid of the mold and get rid of everything. And like I said earlier, like I'm not an expert in this. Right. I mean, I am somewhat now, because of everything I've gone through, and that was 4 years ago. So I've had a lot of time to learn about all this. But if I would have known now what I knew then, I would have done everything very differently. So when we hired a company, we had to be out of our house for, well, they told us 7 days at the beginning, but it ended up being like around 20 days because I think it was a bigger issue than they even realized. Mm-hmm. But when I went inside home,
surprises me because we had everything laid out pretty clearly in our report. I felt
you did, and I don't think they listened to any of that. But anyway, well, they told me on the phone that they would. So here's what happened: is I talked to the owner and the supervisor, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we got this." But what happens if you don't hire a good company is the owner and the supervisor, they're not there when it comes to the times of remediation. And that's just the experience I've had. Because I have cameras inside my house, at that house, when we were remediating. And I walked inside of that house, which was highly advised against me to do that. But it was so bad. So they had breachments in our containment area, which we had a downstairs and upstairs. So our downstairs was our kitchen, living room, and dining room, and then one extra room. Our upstairs is where we lived. That was all of our bedrooms. There was 5 bedrooms up there. And when I walked inside that house, after they started remediation, they have a zipped off containment with duct tape. When I walked in, the first time I walked in, the breachment was completely opened and so to me, that means, so they're pulling out the mold and the mycotoxins, but yet they're going, if there's even a tiny breachment in containment, it goes upstairs. So I talked to them about that.
They didn't tie the 2 containments together? It was like separate.
They had plastic. So we had So we had like an open staircase, right, and they plastic that off.
Right.
And they had a zipper containment area. But when I walked in there, the plastic was pulled off and they didn't even care. They didn't care. And so I called them on like day 3 and I told them about that. And also they had all of our AC units, returns and everything all taped off as well. But they still had our AC unit running. Oh. So yeah. So it was just really upsetting to me. And I talked to them about that. And they also had our AC, our air scrubber turned off. It wasn't even plugged in. So there was just issues there.
Yeah, it sounds like.
So what I'm trying to say is people just have to be very careful and know who they're using for mold remediation, because it can be it can be very disappointing. And I paid them a lot of money. It's just very disappointing. So after that, I actually got more sick, unfortunately, like more sick. So the sad thing is, I worked with a mold illness specialist, and he's the one who convinced me that you need to have your remote home remediated. So I did it. Well, about 4 to 6 months or so after I had remediation done, I was more sick. And he kept telling me, I see this a lot. Like, remediation is not always done correctly. You need to have your home retested. And I was like, no, because we spent so much money to have it remediated. And I kept resisting, but I kept getting sicker and sicker. And so I finally had it retested again with Sean, and it was only 1 point lower on my ERMI than it was prior to remediation. And I think really a lot of it was they just didn't do a good job or do it the right way. And that is what pushed all the mycotoxins upstairs where I live, in my home, in my room, in my master bedroom. And it just made everything so much worse. And I got worse and worse and worse. So I said all that to say this. I wish I would have trusted Sean and listened to him in a company like you, Adam, that does it the right way, that truly cares, that understands Sears level illness.
Yep.
That I don't know if our listeners understand what that means, but yeah, I would, if I could go back now and do it again, I would have paid more money or whatever money or whatever to hire a company that understands Sears level illness, that you have to make sure it's done the correct way.
Mitzi, did you have additional remediation after that, or did you just end up leaving that home?
No, I did not. We just left. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure you couldn't stomach the idea of doing it over again.
Yeah, at that point, yeah. Oh, yeah. If I could go back, I would have done that. But at this point, yeah, it was just like, I see now that it just wasn't done correctly. And that's what made me more sick. Yeah, you have to hire a company that understands Sears level sickness or illness. And if you don't hire a company that understands that, you're basically kind of wasting your money, and it can actually make you more sick. That's what happened to me with what I went through.
Well, for sure, if it's not done properly, they can cross-contaminate the parts of the home that were never affected in the first place, or create conditions where molds like to grow by not shutting an air conditioning system off that you sealed off, which could potentially had side effects that we can't even quantify, which is and yeah, man, that's unfortunate. So you move out of the home, you move into a new environment. How long did it take you to start feeling better?
3 weeks.
Wow, I didn't even realize it was that quick, Mitzi.
Well, it was a huge and drastic, noticeable difference because I was fully bedridden. Like, I don't want to get up.
It's okay to be vulnerable for a minute on this show. It's what it's about.
It's a scary thing. You talk about SIRS and it's what chronic inflammatory response syndrome, and going from feeling perfectly normal to all of a sudden dealing with this unknown issue that's, like you said, it ultimately left you bedridden. Yeah, I don't know how I would personally deal with that. I think that would really knock most people for a loop. And you're not knowing how to handle it, how to get rid of it, and ultimately whether or not you're going to feel better. I'm sure all those fears, were something you were dealing with at the time.
And something I wish I would have shared with Micah when he was on. And if I haven't shared it with him before, I need to. He earned a lot of respect from me during that time, Mitzi. I mean, Adam and I see on a daily basis the friction these situations can cause between spouses.
Yeah.
And the way Micah handled that situation, now, it may have been different behind closed doors. I don't know. But from what I could see and how Micah was handling that situation, being the one that wasn't really affected by your environment at your house, compared to what I see on a daily basis, it just spoke volumes about his character. It really did.
Mitzi, would you talk about that a little bit? Because you don't have to, by the way. But me and Sean often find ourselves in that situation where one partner is feeling just fine, or at least doesn't have any noticeable symptoms, and then the other is fighting for their health and sanity, and it's like, how did that process go for you? I hope I'm not overreaching.
Yeah, no, it's okay. So it was it was a nightmare. Like, so his mom, so let's go back to the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. So when it first started with me, because I just want to help people that have no idea that are what's happening to them. So when it first started in 2018, I started with hives from head to toe, and then I started with wheezing, and so I thought this must be like an allergy or something that it's. So I changed all my detergents and everything, and that wasn't it. It didn't change anything because I had no idea it was the mold. That was like, I started having symptoms about 3 months after the water damage in our house. So then I hired the air testing people, and they, I've already told you about that. And then I hired Sean, and he gave me that was in April. So it was like 5 months after I had the air quality testing, and he gave me the correct results. Like, there's mold in my house. That's what's happening. So, so my symptoms went from hives to wheezing to severe shortness of breath. I had hypersensitivity pneumonitis. That's a very big sign. If anybody has that,
what is that, Mitzi? Explain what that is. Hypersensitivity pneumonitis.
Oh, it's I was very short of breath and I couldn't breathe, and I was like, I didn't know what was happening. So I went into the urgent care center. The first case I had was in November of 2018. That was July, April, September. 5 months after the water damage happened was my first case of that. And like my shortness of breath, like if you do a pulse oximeter, it should be 100. Mine was like 93. So I was having very bad shortness of breath. And they wouldn't let me leave until they gave me enough steroids to get it up beyond 95, because 95 is like kind of their, like, okay, you can go home. So anyway, so I had that in November of 2018, and then that was just the beginning. Like, I had, oh my goodness. Then in June of the next year, I was in the hospital for 5 days with pneumonia. Like, I had pneumonia multiple times with hypersensitivity pneumonitis multiple times, until I got out of that house, basically. So I was in the hospital, I think it was 4 times from 2018 to 2020. And then in 2020, my husband's mom, my mother-in-law, that's where I got a little choked up, because at that point I was bedridden. And she came and lived with me, and she took care of me, and she took me to all my doctor's appointments, and she made all our meals, and because my husband was just spent at that point. Sorry.
Oh, wow.
So my heart goes out to people that deal with this, because it will take you down. And what irritates me the most about everything I went through is medical doctors don't understand mold illness, and they gaslight you and they tell you you're crazy. I've been through all that. Sorry. And they make you think you're crazy. They tell you that mold illness doesn't exist, and all the stuff. And luckily I'm married to a chiropractor, and I'm now very passionate about this, and I now understand that mold illness is a very real, and it destroys your immune system and it takes you down.
Mitzi, who did you talk to? How did you find somebody that could help you?
Well, I first started seeing a mold illness doctor in South Tampa. Sean knows who that is. And he helped me quite a bit, but what actually helped me the most was getting out of the house. That was like, you can't, now that I know, like, hindsight's 2020, right? So now that I know what I know, you have to get out of the environment. And I talked to so many people today that I work with that are dealing with mold, and they tell me, well, I can't afford to get out of my house, or I can't afford, but how much is your health worth? And you have to get out of that environment, because if you're not getting out of that environment, you're never going to get well. And it's only going to make you worse and worse. And I know that now from what I went through. So
I appreciate you being vulnerable about your frustrations, about your situation, Mitzi, because when we first went down this rabbit hole of helping immune compromised individuals, we dealt with so many people who had these unexplained symptoms. They couldn't explain them themselves. They were confused as to what they're going through. My husband's healthy. My kids are healthy. I'm the only one sick.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm the only one that's sick here. My doctor's telling me all my lab results are normal. Should be fine. Should be healthy. There's nothing wrong with me. All in my head. I can't tell you how many people have told us that. And the one thing they all have in common? Pretty significant mold issues in their home. Now, whether or not that's the root cause as to why they're feeling that way, I don't know. But it can't be a coincidence.
Right. It's not. And that's so one thing I've learned since I've been on this journey, because I knew nothing about this prior to 2020 when I got so sick, is there's a genetic defect that it's actually affecting more and more people now. Oh my goodness. There's so much to go into. So there's a genetic defect that people like me, and a lot of it has to do with MTHFR, and that could be a whole nother hour-long conversation. But I have that defect on both sides. I'm a double variant with 677 and 1298. And more people today are having that defect, but it basically means that your body does not detoxify well. So when you have toxins coming into you like mold or Lyme or anything, I mean, it could be chemicals, it could be anything, heavy metals, whatever. But for me particularly, it was mold and Lyme, and my body does not detoxify it well. So what Dr. Shoemaker, I'm thankful for him, because he taught me a lot of what I know now, is that he coined the phrase CIRS, which is chronic inflammatory response syndrome. So when you have those toxins that come into your body, which mold is a horrid toxin, mycotoxins, it causes massive inflammatory response in the body, and it leads to all kinds of issues like I've experienced, and also autoimmune diseases like I've been diagnosed with. But I truly believe the root cause of that was the mold that caused me to get multiple autoimmune disease diagnoses from Western medicine. So yeah.
Mitzi, had you, before you had the mold exposure, can you go back to like other environments or other buildings over time that you'd ever had exposures where you like connect the dots now and say, man, maybe that environment could have also been contributing, or was it just a one-shot deal for you?
No.
For most of your life, you were good. That
Yep.
event occurred, and boom, all of a sudden, it like opened up this entire world to you.
Yeah, it was, I mean, I have never ever had any bronchial pneumonia, like lung issues, asthma, nothing ever. Like I've always been very healthy until that water damage issue in my house in 2018. And then after that, like my whole entire world and health went downhill.
Right.
So yeah, it was 100%. Like I have zero doubt in my mind. 100%. It was that water damage issue that led to the mold, that led to my health issues after that.
So Mitzi, other than moving out of that environment, which obviously sounds like was the biggest step as far as your health is concerned, what other lifestyle or treatment changes did you make that in just in your experience, for you personally, what types of lifestyle or treatment, so forth, helped you the most?
So that's all, like, how long do y'all have? Now, well, that's been a long journey. And
if there's not a simple answer to that, that's fine. I just didn't know if there's one thing you could think of in your mind and point to that seemed to be a significant help for you.
Yeah. Well, the first and biggest thing, and if I can stress this to anybody and everybody, not just on this podcast, but everybody that I talk to, you have to remove yourself from the environment.
Or have it remediated properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yeah.
Either or. So yeah.
Either or.
But the end is you have to be out of that. You have to be in a safe environment.
Right.
Whether it means moving out or proper remediation.
Right.
That's the biggest thing. Beyond that, so I've been through hyperbaric oxygen treatments. I've gone through 28 of those. Those were big. That helped me a lot. I've gone through 10 pass ozone treatments, IV treatments. But the biggest thing that has probably helped me the most out of everything I've done, and those were all big things. Those were all great things that helped me a lot. Was I found a lady that helped me who did bioresonance testing on me, and she told me that I also have Lyme disease, which I didn't even know. So where this correlates together, and I think this plays a big part in a lot of people's issues with mold, is mold suppresses the immune system, but Lyme comes out because of that suppression of the immune system. And so that's where, like, I have had both. That's where I think a lot of my bedridden, like a lot of my, like, took me down. A lot of that was mold and Lyme. It wasn't just mold. So yes, mold can destroy somebody. But when you have mold and Lyme together, that, like, I was near death, and I'm not trying to be like exaggerate or be dramatic. Like the two together almost killed me. So I had to figure out, because a lot of what I do now is to help people who have experienced what I've experienced. And I knew, I mean, I am a holistic practitioner along with my husband, who's a chiropractor, and we worked together. And it took me down, even knowing holistic, the things to do. And I've done the hyperbaric, I've done all the things, and it still almost killed me. Like, it's just, don't think it's not that big of a deal. It's a big deal. And so I now use a bioresonance system that I create homeopathic formulas that have helped me to get better. And I have helped a lot of other people now to get better. This is not about me. This is about trying to help other people to understand the seriousness, because step one with a lot of people that I've talked to, they tell me, but I can't afford to sell my house, or I can't afford to leave my house. I can't afford to get out of my house. But I can't express enough, like, you have to get out of your house unless you're going to properly remediate it, which is also, it can be expensive. But I try to tell them, like, your health is your biggest asset. And if you don't regard your health, like, what else do you have? I mean, if you have nothing else, you have to remediate, or you have to get out of that house. But I still have people that are like, but I can't afford it. And I'm sure you two have hear the same things sometimes.
Yeah, it's a tough spot for people from every angle. Go ahead, Sean.
No, I was just gonna say it's not a cheap process. Even just the discovery phase of this is not a cheap process. And I'm glad you brought up the Lyme part of the puzzle here, Mitzi, too. You know, we hope to be at iLads in a few months, where the main topic is going to be Lyme disease.
That would be awesome.
And how to treat it. So we hope to just hopefully get there to begin with, but also have some people on that can talk more in depth with the mold and Lyme connection there.
Yeah. Yeah, it's huge. And I had no idea prior to this. I mean, even with the mold, like I told you guys at the beginning. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Oklahoma, and I was bitten by ticks many times. And so it just, when your immune system is suppressed by mold, the Lyme comes out.
Well, yeah, I mean, this was emotional, and I get why. I mean, just from a glance of what you've described, it's hard. I feel what you're feeling. You know, your willingness to talk about it is helpful. That's why we started the show. We wanted to talk about it. You know, everybody's experience is completely different. But there's so much misinformation out there. There's it's, you know, hearing it from somebody who's lived it is important, and your perspective could be somebody else's perspective that could be suffering the same way as you right now, and being told the same things you were told, going through that situation and not knowing where to turn. And so if this can help one person, you know, or at least lead them down the path of educating themselves so they can figure out what works best for them, what ultimately is the right decision for them, whether that means vacating or remediating or what, that's important.
Yes. Amen. And thank you for that, Adam. It's just, that's one of the hardest things. I hate to say this, but if you go the Western route, you're going to get gaslighted. You just are. They think mold, I can't even tell you how many times, even with pulmonologists, when I can't even breathe, they're like, no, it's not mold. Like, they laugh at me, and they have laughed at me. And
well, I think it's a bigger issue where people think that Western medicine is the fix, is the end all be all, fixes everything, when it's impossible to know everything well, you know. And I think it has its place. But for something like this, I mean, Western medicine doctors barely know about nutrition.
Correct.
And that's just something that you would think that you could go to them and talk to about it, but there's so many differing opinions in regards to nutrition, and that would be something that they would have been schooled on in school. This type of thing, it really does take you searching out or educating yourselves, because there isn't a lot of information out there,
Right.
and even the information that is out there, can be intermittent.
Right.
So, like I said, hearing from you, having gone through that and searching for answers and, filtering through all the BS to find what ultimately ended up helping you, which is the most extreme thing, right? Which is just getting out and starting over. And I've had plenty of clients that done that. Sean can tell you, numerous clients, or gut the house down to the frame. And we've had a bunch of people do that too, because they don't want to leave anything open to interpretation or left open to what if. So we've had lots of clients doing that recently too, and find that it wasn't just that one event they knew about, but a whole bunch of different events that they didn't know about. And this is an issue. And we talk a lot about building sciences and where things fail, and through HVAC systems and other water damage exposures. We get it from all angles, and it's really tough to live in an environment where you're not having exposures, but knowing what to look for in yourself is the first step. That's the alarm bell to say, hey, there could be a bigger issue here. I need to look deeper.
Yes, I agree. You're so right. Yep.
Well, Mitzi, thanks for your time this afternoon.
Yes, you're very welcome. I just want to help other people at this point, because 5 years ago, I had no idea what was happening to me. And if I can help other people at this point, that's my passion now, because I know the nightmare I went through. I'm happy to help anybody, and now that's now my passion. So I'm happy to do that. And I'm so appreciative of Adam and Sean, both of you, with what you guys do, because you're going against the mainstream, and you're changing lives and uncovering the truth.
Well, Mitzi, do you want to share some of these Facebook groups you've created where maybe people can find you, where you're sharing things and trying to create a little community online?
Oh, yeah. So I have a Facebook group called The Mold Illness Maven. And then I also have just created the Lyme Lady, LYME Lady. And then you can also go to my website, which is richesonwellness.com. That's spelled RICHESON wellness.com. So that's what I do now, is I test people and I create homeopathics and herbals. I work with Cellcore, a lot of designs for a lot of other companies. So any of those websites will help you, or I'm open to talk to anybody that needs help.
Thanks, Mitzi. Appreciate your time. And reach out. This is how you educate yourself. Figure out what makes sense for you guys.
Yes.
All right. Thanks for listening to Mold Show, and we'll see you next time.
Take care.
The content in this podcast should not be taken as medical advice. While our goal is to educate, the hosts are not medical professionals, and the opinions expressed are their own. For any health concerns or questions about mold exposure and its effect, please seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider.